I'm Flávia Dinnebier, and I'm presenting the article written with Professor Sérgio Luís Boeira entitled Rights of Nature and Ecological Justice in Latin America Facing Environmental Crisis. We are experiencing a serious socio-environmental crisis in which processes known as planetary boundaries that regulate the stability and resilience of the Earth system has already been exceeded, such as integrity of the biosphere, biogeochemical flows, and climate change. And in the next decades, 25% of the planet's fauna and flora might be extinct. And these factors, they are also related to the emergence of zoonotic diseases. Pandemics such as COVID-19, they are the results of the way that human beings change the environment, obtain food, trade and consume animals, intensify agriculture and urbanization. There is a reductionist vision of the human-nature relationship that is also seen in law, what results in a legislation that ends up allowing environmental damage and sees the protection of nature only in terms of humans and properties protection. But nature can no longer be conceived only as a mere resource to be exploited. So when you look at this graphic, don't you think there is an injustice happening with animals, for example? As Eduardo Godina says, the destruction of plants, animals, and ecosystems is a matter of justice, and ecological justice involves the relationship between human beings and the rest of the natural world. So the protection linked only to the dignity of the human person shows a morally incomplete perspective. It's essential to include nature in the justice community and in the system of rights, recognizing the value of all forms of life and nature's intrinsic value, what requires it to be considered as a subject of rights. But it's important to say that the legal personality of nature doesn't mean that it will have the same right as people or as other legal subjects, because different beings have different needs and require different kinds of rights. So, the promulgation of the rights of nature has a strong root in Latin America, but there are developments in many parts of the globe, as you can see on the screen. And all the initiatives, they are in the United Nations Harmony with Nature website. Ecuador's constitution promulgates the autonomous rights of nature and states that nature, or Pachamama, has the right to have respected her existence and the maintenance and regeneration of her life cycles, functions, and evolutionary process, has also the right to restoration, and that the state applies precautionary and restrictive measures for activities that might lead to species extinction, destruction of ecosystems, or permanent alteration of natural cycles. In Bolivia, there are 2 laws that protect the rights of Mother Earth, and these rights are to live, to the diversity of life, to water, clean air, balance, restoration, to live free from contamination, to respect ecological limits, and change the search for economic growth for a life in harmony with nature. And based on these laws were created the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth, that states that nature also has fundamental rights to exist, prosper, evolve, have its ecosystem processes guaranteed, as well as the quality of life for all its beings, both present and future generation. In Brazil, 3 municipalities have recognized the rights of nature. Bonito and Paudalho recognize nature's right to exist, prosper, and evolve, includes all beings, humans and non-humans, as holders of the right to an ecologically healthy and balanced environment, and to maintain ecosystem processes essential to life's quality. Florianopolis, where our university is located on, recognizes the preservation of nature by its own right to exist, and aims to promote harmony with nature, quality of life for human and non-human populations. Restoration of nature includes agroecology and the need for decisions to be based on science, precautionary and conservational principles. So rights of nature have been also recognized in court decisions, including rights of rivers, ecosystems, and mountains. Even the Inter-American Court of Human Rights recognized the autonomous legal protection of nature and the relationship between the protection of the environment and human rights. Just to mention two cases in Colombia, where these rights were recognized, even though which laws and constitution don't regulate the rights of nature. In 2016, the Constitutional Court recognized the rights of the Atrato River. And as you can see on this picture, they ordered the protection of the river and designated guardians. One should be a representative of the state and another one of the indigenous peoples related to this river. And in 2 years ago, the Supreme Court of Justice considered the claim of 25 children about the increase in deforestation in the Amazon rainforest and its contribution to climate change. Nature's rights were recognized to the forest and its natural components. Although there are advances in these fields, using now the example of Brazil, what we've been seeing in political field is a complete injustice towards nature, is the opposite of protecting its rights. Since Jair Bolsonaro assumed the presidency in 2019, and according to the report of the Instituto do Clima, the Weather Institute, in the last 2 years, the environmental and climate agenda in Brazil suffered setbacks on a large scale, including revocation of environmental protection rules, a policy without commitment to combating deforestation, and favorable to nature's exploitation. Environmental agencies and Amazon control are now in charge of the military without technical knowledge, under which there was an increase in fires, high rates of deforestation, and a 42% drop in fines imposed for violations against flora in the Amazon. Also, invasions of indigenous lands grew 135% in 2019. The president signed a law project to release within indigenous lands, including where there are isolated Indians, mining, electricity generation, oil and gas exploitation, and the cultivation of genetically modified organisms. And even with the increase of fires and deforestation, the government begins this year with a 27% reduction in the budget for environmental surveillance and for fighting forest fires, and a 61% decrease for the creation and management of conservation units compared to 2018. In addition, there are measures decreasing the control of wood exports, amongst many other measures. And another characteristic of Bolsonaro's government is scientific denialism. He even denied data from satellites about deforestation and many others related to COVID-19. So under governments that deny science or that focus the economy on extraction of resources, natural resources, the tendency to change the paradigm in legal science and in environmental policies is delayed or even precluded. Much still needs to be changed for there to be true ecological justice. I thank you for your attention.